Okay, I've got the time is 6:30. So we'll call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia to order. It's Monday, July 22nd, 2019. So first we'll go through our extensive agenda for the regular business meeting. We have the minutes, stat report. We'll have the approval of the agenda. And then under the public hearing, we have the extended stay hotel, which I think all of you got Tony's email. And I know most everybody, Roger was the only one that didn't respond, that they were fine with postponing.
Okay, so I haven't checked the email, so I'm not sure. So it's on the agenda, so we're just gonna table it to another meeting, basically?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And then the other thing that was discussed in the email was to go ahead and extend the moratorium for 120 days. That'll give us a time to flesh out some of the issues brought up by the in-town suites attorney, some of the issues brought up by the nonprofit that's been emailing, and then look into a little bit further. Gwinnett County does have an initiative going. Well, I guess it's a nonprofit, but Gwinnett County has funded a substantial amount of money into the Home First program. And maybe looking at that and tying that in. It wouldn't tie in with our ordinance, but at least it would give us, there's some other opportunities for emergency shelter housing for people who find themselves without shelter. Before they can find where they really need to be for services, so we can check into that a little bit more. So if, and everybody was agreeable to that in the emails. So with that, then under the approval of the agenda, we'll just need a motion to add item B under public, well, it wouldn't be public hearing.
New business.
It would be item A, under new business. And it would be resolution 2019-16, extension of moratorium on extended stay hotels.
And that's 120 days from
From,
July
it's current.
22nd?
27th.
27th, okay. Okay.
Okay. And that's it for the regular meeting. Anybody have any questions or issues? Yeah. Okay, then we'll go over to the work session agenda. Any correspondence? Butch isn't here. Melissa, you don't have anything for correspondence? City attorney
I do
report?
need an executive session over some litigation matters. And I wanted to report that we are in the year of renewal of your trademark, everybody's somebody. And we are, Mayor Hinkle, Jim Hinkle from Grayson, who passed away, was the person who was, who's sort of midstream, the applicant for us in that, and we're switching, with your permission, to an intellectual property lawyer named Brian Bachhoff, who is local and very skilled and good. So we have to do some investigating, see where we work, but just wanted to let you know we were transitioning that.
See everybody come
Then we have under discussion items, short-term rentals. Who wants to talk about that?
in. I just provided you guys with a packet in typical teacher fashion. The first page gives you the GMA perspective on regulation of these short-term rental properties, which, as Brucey points out, it can become an incredible point of contention in litigation, and gives a little bit of history of some of the things, some of the cases that we probably need to look at. In the last paragraph, he specifically advises that we rely heavily on our city attorney before proceeding with any sort of regulations for short-term rentals, because one wrong move can, of course, produce a great deal of opposition. So that's something, of course, to keep in the back of all of this. The second page that I've given you is just a little snippet from Peachtree Corners and how they've handled it. Because they're a new city, they went right in 2016 and just defined a short-term rental as a dwelling unit for a period of less than 31 days. And anything else is gonna be regulated essentially like a hotel motel. So that effectively is a ban on them, less than 31 days. The second ordinance is Brookhaven, which is way more complex because they've actually created a separate category for short-term rentals. If you kind of go through to the second to the last page in your packet, unlike Lilburn, for example, who regulates this as a bed and breakfast industry, they're not looking at it in terms of that or hotel motel, but rather a separate category in their ordinances. And that really just allows them to require permits and treat it more so as a commercial property and subject it to the taxes, hotel motel taxes in addition to that. And they've got other qualifications on there as well. So it seems to me that the trend, looking at some of these issues, the trend has been, if you are more of a touristy area that doesn't seem to have enough hotel locations to accommodate its tourist industry, you are gonna see that cities really make more of an effort to actually regulate them with licensing and taxes. However, cities that don't tend to have that tourism factor, and I think Snellville would be in that category, Dunwoody is another one. Dunwoody went ahead and has a ban on them as well. So, we're looking at an option of regulation a little bit more heavily or a ban, essentially. And, the question is, are we in a position to enforce anything that we decide to do? Do we have the resources? Do we need staff expansion? What is it that we want to do as a penalty? So those are all issues, and if we in fact, what I've also been reading and seem to appear as well is that, the point at which the litigation often comes is when those penalties are actually issued on these particular properties. So I've actually been contacted already by a woman who is the executive director for Short-Term Rental Owners Association of Georgia.
You got her too, huh?
Yes, and she's looking for clarification. So I simply told her, we are putting this on the work session agenda for this evening for further discussion. So that's the point at what we're looking at. There's certainly going to be some stakeholders involved here if we do want to go forward with this. But it seems like our options are, to look at that 31-day window as a ban factor, or we can go ahead and try to regulate it. But again, do we have the resources if we really want to follow up with this from a code enforcement perspective?
I asked Jason to look at this a year and a half ago, and there were only a couple that were in our area. I haven't looked at it recently because life.
There's some verbiage in the UDO right now, I think we put the 31-day in there originally from discussions from about a year ago when we had that conversation.
Okay.
From,
I don't know if it's changed that much as far as offerability or what's out there. I haven't looked recently, but
it's probably pretty quick to look it up.
It's very easy to find separate properties, and in areas that you really don't think that these are popping up. And, you know, in your neighborhoods, basically.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody's renting a couch for $15 a night
couch.
near me. So, it's like, you know, and
Wow.
again, I mean, it raises the issue of how do you regulate that?
Have you checked what websites like Airbnb
Airbnb,
or
HomeAway,
VRBO or?
right, those are
to
the three
see?
main ones.
Yeah.
HomeAway is the other one.
Uh-huh,
But
yeah.
vacation rental by owner, of course, are the areas.
And there are some in Snellville?
There are some in Snellville. And, you know, the other concern from a larger perspective from the community is, of course, people who are renting out homes as, are, you know, any of these as party houses. And of
That's my
course, that's-
concern.
Right.
I mean, you know,
Well, and on the, you know, when you first think about it, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but then what you had said at the last work session was, you know, essentially we're turning a property in a residential neighborhood where people have the expectation of residential living.
Right.
And we've turned that into really a commercial business
It
where people
becomes
are
a
in
de
and out.
facto hotel,
Yeah.
essentially, and that's a concern.
That's a problem.
I don't think it becomes a de facto hotel. I think it becomes a de facto flop house because I don't
No.
see people.
No,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't see people coming to Snellville for legitimate vacation reasons.
Right. It's
There-
not
but,
there-
more than.
but
there
you
are-
do have, I
There
mean,
are
there
a
are.
bunch of reasons why people use short-term rentals. They're not all for cooking
Bad
meth,
stuff.
and they're not all for
Not all, only some.
illegitimate reasons. They're, I have a little bit of experience in this, and it takes a lot of money to turn a house into a short-term rental. By the time you furnish it and put in everything that's necessary for a home, sheets, pillows, the whole 9 yards, there is a huge investment above what a standard rental is. So there is a barrier to entry that if it's a standalone house that you can rent the whole house. Now, if someone's doing a couch or a single bedroom,
Right.
that's gonna be very
Different
hard to,
I don't
to
know that you could
regulate.
Yeah,
regulate.
and that's the problem. It's not whole house
Right.
rentals. It's the,
And,
Less than
and
a house.
for me, the big concern is, every time someone rents a room or a house, that's money that's not going into our
hotels.
Hotel
our
motel.
hotel motel tax and
Right.
taking money away from that, which takes away from our ability to promote the city or put on programs for our citizens. I would have a problem with a flat-out total ban, but if you're gonna be running a business, you need to pay business taxes, you need to have business license, you need to have business inspection. I think Mr. Marmol knows exactly what it's like to have to deal with jumping through the
Well, I
hoops of
don't-
government.
Yeah, yeah.
And-
Not abuse in government's what it is.
Well, yeah,
I don't think the regulating people's bedrooms, having a person to come in there and check for this and that in someone's actual house. The only way we travel is Airbnb or those tours basically, probably over 50 different times now, 50 different houses throughout US or Europe. The only bad experience was Paris. And it's only
Well,
because
Paris.
they are used to really, really small, everything small, and I don't like everything so small. It came basically all these different types of living, or not living, but I guess renting while you travel type thing, basically started coming about because it was the hotel industry and all them, tons of regulations came on the books, basically and then through, grandfathering basically, they've been protected, but the new people coming in, they can't break into the industry. So it's like Uber against the taxis or the breweries against the distributors. This is the same thing. It's a new market that's coming in against the old market that basically have the laws in their favor to stay in power basically, so there can't be competition. This is the same thing. They came in, now they've expanded this and that, and now they're trying to, I guess now the government's slowly trying to regulate them. The state has tried a few times and failed at the state level. Cities are trying to do it independently, but really, it's just a matter of time before it goes to court, and then they settle in court
Already,
depending on.
there's
Yeah.
been several cases in litigation.
Yeah,
Do you
I've
have
seen
an
the.
extra one of those packets?
Somebody should, there was a copy for you. Did y'all?
Now you have to.
Okay. Somebody, somehow it didn't get passed down correctly.
Okay, I've got one.
The two regulations that I read that Peachtree Corners was doing, that's on their books, was basically a fire inspection and I forgot what the other one was. It's basically they come in and they inspect for a fire, this and that. But then the next thing's gonna be basically, it's just, this is how it starts. Eventually it's gonna be way overregulated and then it's gonna be another industry, another one's gonna come out long term, who knows what it's gonna be, it's just, it evolves. But the issues that I see already are gonna be, oh, what about handicap accessible stuff? Cause these are people's houses, it's just like you
Right.
go in and then they invite you here, some, like they decorate the room sometimes it's just, their child moved out and they just rent the room now cause this and that. But there's gonna be like, I see a bazillion issues coming based on just the cafe stuff that we're dealing with. That's gonna be like, oh, well, you know, this and this and this, and then it's, so I'm not in favor of, I'm in favor of letting Airbnb or all those different new markets evolve and do what they do, and I don't even see like, there's no imminent threat, some sort of huge scare thing going on or some kind of fear thing going on with it, I don't see, but that's my view. I
The
don't-
thing I don't wanna see is like what happened on, Dogwood Road recently.
That's not allowed by them, that's not,
Yeah.
that was
But
someone's
that
house.
wasn't even a
that-
rental, I think the
Yeah.
person owns
They
the
own that house and they, yeah, that's
Yeah,
something
that's
different.
true.
That's,
But, you know, and I hear what you're saying with the industry stuff, and I'm not opposed to any of that as well, but I look at it from the perspective of, in my neighborhood, am I gonna now have, you know, are there gonna be slowly popping up 3, 4, 5, 10 houses that are essentially vacant, other than people coming in to stay for 2 days a week, 2 weeks at a time, you know, and there's, you know, it's a neighborhood. That's the issue I have, is just looking at it from the homeowner's perspective, not, you know, I'm not here to opine on the whole industry. I think it's great when people come up with great ideas like this.
And
But
there's
it's
such
how
a
do you
broad
regulate this?
variety.
Yeah, if we have residential neighborhoods that are zoned for residential living,
It shouldn't be commercial.
I think the
You know.
home occupation ordinance clarifies that you have to be in the home and part of the occupation. So you couldn't even under the, if you allow short-term rentals, you couldn't just, under the current code and the UDO text, is, you know, one of the first caveats of the business is that you have to occupy it. So that's pretty easy as far as enforcement goes, if they were gonna open up an entire home and rent it out. The model I see more so in Snellville is someone that may be passing through or just needs a night or somewhere and they don't wanna go drop 150 at the Hampton Inn, or maybe they are at the hospital, but they don't have any family, and a lot of people use that, from what I see, would be, in this area, would be what you'd get generated. Not necessarily a whole house or even, I mean, unless you were staying for a specific reason, you wouldn't wanna, you know, probably just rooms, but I do think there are some concerns that you gotta deal with too, if that really caught on, and then you've got new people coming over to a house day after day after day, if they have a good rate, or you get positive reviews, I think that could change the residential character a little bit, but if you look around, we've already got a lot of that, and it's with larger families too, and some of them are more traditional homes, so you already have those same issues with parking and some of those things that we try to solve through code enforcement, so I don't really know how you really solve it outside of, to enforce it would be tough too, because you'd have to basically investigate the house, you'd have to make sure the owners were not living there, and then if they were doing it kinda like off, you know, market and not advertising it on some kind of internet platform, then you really would, I mean, you'd have to stake the house out, and that's the trouble we've had with, some of these other home businesses when we were unregulating personal care homes. Do you live here? Yes, but we knew they didn't live there, and we couldn't necessarily prove it unless we sat an officer on the street for 12 hours and then the resources to prove whether they live there or not, and that's kind of the issue we have with home businesses. We've seen, not just for residency, but people buying older homes in Snellville to actually
Right.
move their businesses in, with no intention of living there, but only because the property was so much cheaper than commercial property. And we've caught a couple of those early, but that's kind of the trend we've seen in a lot of neighborhoods. So,
I guess, one of my other concerns about this is if, we aren't one of the cities that is gonna choose to look at this issue seriously, then are we gonna become a target city for, let's go in there and let's start doing this? Because, all it takes is a simple search of, Airbnb rentals, how to get into that market, how to become a host. And, it says quickly, cities that have regulations in Georgia, cities that don't have areas that don't. It doesn't take too many steps further than that to figure out, well, now you're setting yourself up to become the next best place to have these. So I think we need to do something, but what exactly we need to do, of course, is up to all of us.
Yeah, my concern is it's gonna be another deal like the group
The
homes.
group homes,
Where
exactly.
it just became a haven
It
and,
becomes a loophole.
well, frankly, they were underqualified. They had handicapped people there and they didn't have the same safety requirements as a hotel for
Exactly.
healthy people. So, plus it was a rip-off game in most cases.
Okay, so if everybody can read up on this material and then we'll put our heads together. We've got the code enforcement work session on July 31st.
Yeah.
So
Good deal.
You would segue well with that.
we can work that in on some of that
Sounds good.
discussion.
Yeah.
If I can also, I prepared a memo on the issue as well, and
Oh,
maybe I
great.
can just have this to look over with what Christie gave you all.
Stapled in my packet.
And Charles, do you like one of those?
This is just a commercial while y'all are passing those around.
Can I have your copy of?
One of the good things about hiring outside counsel
No telling where it
is that we get experience at lots of other things, not at your cost. So we were engaged by a property owner in the Lake Oconee, Greene County area because they did regulate. And it was huge because they're a vacation market. People were in there and invested. They had a lot of money in these large houses. And so we've litigated in this area. We
Okay.
know what the arguments are from the other side. So it's just an experience thing that comes with working other places. So we think we can guide you to keep you out of legal issues. And what y'all are describing, tax issues, no question, you can impose those taxes. We can investigate because you can't survive in this market without using one of those services. So there are 12, I think, is what Chuck and Jay pulled up, is there are 12 locations that you can rent now using 2 of those services. So you can undercover find the places and identify the people and the exact location and what they're advertising and whether it fits with your code. You just have to do it every now and then. Downside is this beds for rent issue has come to the county, other places, and you usually find out when you got something bad is when they want to come in and put a parking pad down. They can't get in the driveway. They need a parking pad as part of a residential community. And so those can be multi-family, rentals in what would be a standard, but they just can't, the neighbors complain because everybody's parking on the street. And so you can see that there's a downside of that. It has nothing to do with what Councilman Marmol was talking about, which is efficient rental issues. This is just renting rooms to more than one family, and 3 or 4 or 5 into a regular house. It's not a good scene. So.
Doesn't that fall under our prohibition of boarding houses then?
It does, and quality of life issues. We've got some certain sizes of rooms and those kind of things. That kind of regulation helps.
But it's still tough to enforce.
Right, but it's hard to distinguish unless you go ahead and do what Peachtree Corners has done, which is define short-term rentals and so you get something that is not that boarding houses, and and you get a definition of it and where it has to be, and then what are the regulatory requirements. And then, you know, in order to have that benefit, they've got to register themselves and pay those taxes. It just becomes, or they get shut down too. So,
Yeah, and just, the people I know who've run these target the movie industry, people who are coming into town for
Right.
working on movies. Nurses, because there's a lot of tenant locum doctors and nurses that come in for short-term, 6 to 8 weeks at a time, and need a place to stay. They don't want to be in a hotel because, as we've all heard and seen, extended stay hotels have their own drawbacks. So being in a house is much more advantageous for some traveling professionals. So it's not all flop houses, and it's not all party houses, and it's a strange kind of market.
The other thing when you're looking at the Airbnb stuff is understanding that there's two different categories here too. Airbnb is a lot of people that just rent rooms in their home, that you get that term owner occupied, where the owner lives. Then there are the people that are like VRBO and Airbnb. We were located a few where they are, like I said, we had 10, I think, on Airbnb, where they are renting the entire house out. But there's a lot of differences in, you know, in those two even, and how they regulate them. And a lot of the cities we've looked at, Savannah, talked to their planning director for about half an hour, but there are different ways to do that. And some just regulate it through taxes, life safety codes, and occupancy. Savannah does it a little weirder. Their initial ordinance, when you look at it, looks real simple, like they just allow it. But then when you read in their zoning regulations, you start finding out that in their wards, as they call them, they only allow like 20% of the parcel numbers to be used. And so, you know, people may want to do it and can't, kind of like liquor stores, you know, there are only so many.
Boy, you talk about a nightmare to regulate.
Yeah.
Because I can have a Airbnb up and running in 72 hours, whereas, so it would be awfully hard to regulate them in that regard.
All right, we have discussion for extended stay. Do we need to have more discussion on that?
I think we need to have another work session on this, maybe after our 31st. Let's see what happens on the 31st with our
With the
discussions, and then
ordinance.
we'll decide.
we put a burden on a group, two groups actually had meetings with the in-town suites folks that were concerned. So they have a really limited number of issues with the ordinance, so it wasn't across the board. It was a list of 6 items. And we have really shifted the burden back to the in-town suites attorneys to come up with what they think their suggested solutions would be. And so that would, to me, would be a next step, is to get their suggestions and then let you guys review it and then see how we should respond to it. Would be a good, in addition to the 31st, but just to let you know that even that group did not comment on the bulk of the ordinance. It was just 6 targeted areas, and of those, it sounded to me like maybe 2 or 3 of them were acceptable to the people who were there, and you know, there's these key issues that have to wait and see what they suggest. So.
Yeah, I'm visiting tomorrow, visiting in-town suites. I just want to look. I've never been in there, so I'm going to go see what I see. I've thought about it. Would there be, is it a possibility that we might want to grandfather that particular one in some areas? I mean, I think they have made some strides in improving their, you know, image and the number of police calls. I mean, I don't know that we want to grandfather them in on all the areas that we have concerns with, or they have concerns with, but perhaps some of them. And like I was thinking, when they talk about this like senior citizens that have lived there ever since they took over in-town suites. I mean, I hate to have to kick a person like that out on the
But-
street. But-
You have to have a level playing field for all businesses. You can't allow one to run under one rule and somebody, that would be patently unfair for anyone who were to enter the market.
You're basically giving them a monopoly for a general
Well, you're
regional
giving them
area.
a competitive advantage.
A huge advantage because it's gonna kill anybody that tries to come into the market won't be able to come into the market. They themselves said it at the meeting, like, you heard the arguments, it's not, they're gonna get all the business and that's it. There's not gonna be another, it's a way to kill any of these kinds of living, except that one, for the time being. In future councils, who knows if that one will even be around, so it's,
Well,
That, the place to really set those kind of guidelines is in the SUP application process, which I think they should have to consent to, and then it'd be like variances that you grant, and maybe there appears to be a concern over time of stay, and so that's a sort of a sensitive area, I think, and it's 180 days right now in the ordinance. They want longer, and they gave the example of the senior folks.
yeah, and they gave the example of the students that would have to leave their school.
Right.
That
And that
makes
is
them an
a-
apartment, but
And that was sensitive, but in the variance area, when you look at there are 8 rooms, 8 doors that connect rooms, which is a structural thing, and I didn't hear a lot of objection to that being a condition of a special use permit being okay. So, it becomes easy to do that. That format for doing it makes the exceptions constitutional and driven by the fact that it's already been built. The compromise on term, they're going to suggest something when they send it to us, which is probably going to be open-ended. I think I used the example in one of the meetings the other day, is if we were just really trying to worry about the students, we could do that by formula and get them to the end of the school year just by formula. We
Yeah.
could just do that. And so it's easy to get to their example. Now, that's not where they want to stop, but somewhere in there is what we will either agree on or fight over at some point. But there's no consensus in the group even. It's something to be talked through. And that's one of the hard ones, is time. Of how long do you let them stay and the special circumstances that go with it. And so that is, of 6, there are probably 2 that hit that mark and become very hard to get consensus on it, on how we draft it. And I think that's the hard part. But big picture is, we got a really good ordinance that covers a lot of issues for a new build that nobody has a problem with. And so we're down to pretty narrow issue, which they're gonna give us some suggestions, and then y'all can react
I
off
think the
that.
problem initially was they bought it, they're part of a very, very large group,
They are.
and they said, we don't need to worry about that until we took action. And I think you brought up a good point too, is that if you get substandard companies or mom and pops that just let whatever go on, you're gonna have a different set of circumstances to deal with. This one,
Right.
I think, I'm assuming that when we snap our fingers now, they pay attention. And it's not a matter of, we don't have to do that. And that's really the bottom line, is I don't have a problem with it at all if we can keep the drug dealers out and the criminals out and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I'd want the ordinance to be strong enough that if we get any future extended stays, that they aren't like what we had there before.
Exactly.
That they're held to a much higher standard.
Mhm.
But, yeah, a lot of those things I think we can work through, like the adjoining doors. I mean, even expensive hotels have those.
It just allows, you're really, more people can be sharing those 2
Facilitating,
rooms. yeah.
right, right,
And a lot of times they're, well, I think in all hotels they're limited, so,
right.
and some of the newer ones I don't think have them, because I think they've seen problems in the industry, because in a lot of hotels, I don't see a lot
Well,
of.
it's a liability issue, because I can get through that door and no one's gonna see me in the hallway.
Yeah.
And I've been in hotels, I mean, there's a door on each side, but I've been in a hotel where the other side wasn't locked, or my side wasn't locked. And, you know, there's some surprises you just don't want.
That could be one of them.
Before we head down that road, let's move on to item C.
Okay,
Um,
and no pole dancing.
The replacement of trees in the right-of-way on Summit Chase Drive and Hidden Lane. I think Butch sent out an email to everybody, right?
Yes,
Um,
and
So,
Kay was part of that.
yes, Gay and Butch's recommendation is on Hidden Lane is to send out a crew to clean up, remove the weeds, trim the hedges and shrubs way back, remove the old bushes, and mulch the whole thing, and see if we can get it down to 2 to 3 visits a year to keep it looking good.
It'll be the front part of the island
Uh-huh.
that'll be completely taken out with the smaller bushes or plants, whatever, and dug out enough to put some of the good mulch in there. So it'll be clear vision, and then the bigger bushes can just be trimmed up. So for now, we think that's the best that
Okay.
we could hope.
Because that hasn't been maintained in a long time.
Well, Butch has gone out there a couple of times himself and just kind of trimmed
Yeah.
it down a
Yeah.
little bit, but,
Really nice.
yeah, no, Mr. Gilliland did it for a while by himself, and then
Mhm.
before that, of course, he had people in the neighborhood that would join in and help him, and now nobody cares, so it was just him, and he's, you know, to
Tired.
the age where he can't really
Mhm.
do it any longer, so. And then we met with a landscape person this afternoon at Summit Chase, and he kind of walked through with us, the problems that are there. One thing is, the size of the trees are stunted due to the asphalt and the concrete of the curbing. They were not the type of trees to plant there to begin with. And he said, if you look across the street, they're probably a fourth of the size of what they could be. The roots grow up, so thus the mound. And he said that he would recommend having someone come in, grind out the stumps, remove the diseased ones that are not growing any longer. And then he said they were planted also too close together, so that's part of the problem. So some of the trees do not need to be replaced because they need that space for the ones that are there. He said as the other ones, as they die off, which he said you really can't tell how long that's gonna be, but as they die off or get so damaged that they do not look good, then at that time remove them, but leave them there for the time being. He said the bad thing about planting there is going to be watering. He said it's not gonna grow unless somebody's gonna come out and water them, especially initially. So that's just some of the things that we talked about. Also, he recommended a certain type of tree where the limbs grow up. He called it a zelkova, and he recommended that tree if there was something going to be planted back. But there again, the spacing is going to have to kind of take a back seat to some of them, because some of the trees are still too close, so, but they're not dead. So we're gonna leave those there and then just work on kind of the progression of how it goes.
So who would be responsible for making sure that the trees are inspected? And there were some trunks that fell that were 8 inches across or larger. Who would be responsible if we have more of those fall and they were to damage property or an individual? That'd be on the city, wouldn't it?
Well, you would have to ask the attorney that. I don't wanna take on that answer, that it would just, you know,
The existing ones, the existing trees, they were being privately maintained. I have not looked at the entry, the way it shows the right of way,
They're in the right of way.
and we would both, it says both. I mean, there would be exposure from anything that falls there is going to, if you're smart, you sue both entities. We would get an alignment.
That's my only concern with keeping any of those trees, because they're,
Really,
Well,
the
he
bigger
did say
danger of that
hire
is the
somebody-
ones going down
Yeah.
to the bridge. Because
He
those
did
all
say hire
overhang the street.
somebody
and
to
those
go
fall all the
in,
time.
trim out the dead limbs, and, he recommended somebody to us that is also an arborist, so, that would kinda, it may need to be every 6 months, however they recommend, so somebody could come in and check and trim out the dead, but,
okay.
Well, I'm fine with the hidden lane thing. I'm still a little up in the air on the Summit Chase thing. It almost seems better if we could just go in and,
Wipe it.
Do it.
yeah, do whatever so that we can plant whatever might need to go in there and just be done with the thing instead of having to keep messing around year to
Well,
year,
and
one
I-
tree here, one tree there.
It is the gateway to
A lot of neighborhoods.
Timberline, Misty Ridge, River Mist, whatever Sabah lives in, whatever that other neighborhood is down there. Each of those have over 100 homes in them. Summit Chase has over 250. Timberline has 60 or 75. Misty,
Whatever.
Oaky,
It's a lot of
Fairway,
houses.
yeah. So we're talking a whole bunch of houses. We're not talking about just a group of 200 people. And it's a gateway to all of those neighborhoods, plus we have the new construction that's going on there on 78 with the senior houses. And then people enter there towards the club. I just don't, whether the homeowners association is responsible for it or whether the city's gonna end up being responsible for it, the thing needs to look consistent and it needs to look good, because it reflects on the city.
So did you have any, the guy that came out, did he give you any kind of cost estimates for like grinding up the stumps or which ones to take out or anything like
No, he
that?
recommended going with a tree service, and we've got several names of people we used before, and then he gave us one, and so we can call and get estimates on that. We can get estimates on removing all of them. We did get an estimate on replacing trees at a, medium to large size, so it's not starting out as a twig. You're talking $700 to $1,200 a tree, depending. But they would be spaced this time properly because, and you're still gonna have the water issue. I did go back and research one of the trees he suggested, and it states that it needs to be moist, so that completely, I would think, would be out. But the Zelkova works well in drought, which you're gonna have to have it work well in drought because there's no water there to come in. But he also said that's gonna be the problem with planting bushes and
Yeah.
plants of smaller size. And I asked him about the crepe myrtles. He said that is very labor intensive. He said, so just know that's a high maintenance thing to put there. It's very pretty, but so it's all in what money is given to maintain.
Well, and the homeowners association has done all the maintenance for the last 30, 35 years, so,
Okay, well, let's get the cost estimates with the tree service on complete removal or just removal of which ones need to be removed.
Okay.
And let's see if there's any way to get water out there.
Yeah, there's if you wanna run irrigation off the right away. And then meter it separately.
Mhm.
actually, Legacy Academy runs their waterworks out there. You just capture their wastewater and
There you go.
send it over, because it's
Well,
like a
somebody
running
needs to
stream.
look at that, because the last time they had their little palm trees a-going, the water was flooding down the hill, not going, you would think it would be recirculating, not, just running down the hill, straight across the street into our catch.
Yep, and they do it every day
Yeah.
in the summer.
Well, there you go.
There's your water.
There's your water.
This is Elcovia, if anybody, it is.
That's not, look at the shopping centers, you'll see a lot of them, they grow well.
Here's one.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
they're like the elm
Yeah.
across the street.
You can have
they
them
grow
more
up,
cone or base shape.
so they don't get over the roads either. There's a good parking lot tree too, we use it a lot.
Okay.
That doesn't do anything for me.
You're gonna have limited choices right there, but that's why half of them are there.
Yeah.
Okay, so on Summit Chase, Gabe, you can come back with just some cost estimates. And then we'll figure out where we go from there. Okay, next we have alcohol sales in Briscoe Park during special events. Lisa, you wanna kinda run down that?
Yeah, that was, we'll put it, really don't have to do anything tonight, that, we'll put it before the Parks and Rec Board first, but, that was just, we have a Atlanta United watch party, that we're planning, and we kind of have been in the works of trying to figure out, we've wanted to do that kind of event for a while, just to have a game, show a game, and, you know, obviously away, we've talked about Braves, we've talked about Georgia, we've talked about, you know, the Falcons, so we've been talking about it for a few years now. But it's kind of hard with, depending on the sport, like baseball's hard because it can be such a long game and can go way past our closing time, so, you know, so we've been just kind of going back and forth with what kind of a game, what kind of sport. And then, this year we were looking, and this particular game kind of popped up as a last minute, deal. And the watch parties are pretty big right now. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it's basically when a sports team is away, then they're at bars, they're at houses, but it's basically just you get a group together and you're just watching the party on TV. In this case, we'll use the, blow-up screen and have it outside. You know, we'll do some other events prior. This game actually starts at 8, but the event would be like from 6 to 10. Soccer's pretty good, it's pretty dialed in, it's like usually 2 hours, pretty straightforward, no commercials. It's pretty good, really. So in the beginning, we'll have some, you know, maybe pick up kickball games for both adults and kids, we'll do maybe some field games, we'll have, you know, some food there. Initially, we thought, you know, maybe have Lincoln Phil come out and just do, you know, some alcohol. So that's kind of the thought behind it and why this even came up. Not at all trying to change the alcohol to say we want it in the park all the time or at even every event. We don't. It would be a very select entity when we would have it. This would be certainly one of them. I would think we would only do this once a year, maybe twice a year. I'm not even sure we do it twice a year. So very select, very narrow and dialed in. But because of the atmosphere of what it is, I'm not gonna say it's a full-on tailgate party, but the idea is to, you know, sit around and watch the game, you know, especially if it's an away game, and give everybody an opportunity. A lot of people, especially with Atlanta United, go into Atlanta to do that, so we thought, you know, certainly there's gotta be a lot of people from this area going away from here to go somewhere to watch it, because it's about the atmosphere, it's about the whole thing, so, we of course have our youth soccer program, so I'm sure we could get a lot of the families to come out, which is who we're gearing it towards, so the alcohol is not the, you know, the focus. The focus is gonna be the families and the other games and the other things that we can do prior, to the actual sitting down and watching the game. But that's kind of the background, but like I said, we'll throw it to the Parks and Rec Board first, make sure they're on board, and then depending on what they say or don't say, then we'll kind of bring it back to y'all to talk about it. But that's kind of the gist of what we're looking at.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
Sounds like a great plan.
hopefully, so.
I'll go.
Well, I mean, obviously, this one is on the 23rd, so this one will move forward as it is, you know, obviously, we won't have alcohol at this one, but, so. We'll know at least
Then
what our
Christie
results-
says she won't be there.
There'll be food.
Yeah.
Can't with the abuse that I take.
Okay, so we're at 7:20 and we need an exec session, don't we?
Can I make 2 really brief comments, Mayor?
Yes, you may.
First is Butch just asked me to remind you all to be aware that on July 31st, all the lanes on 78 and 124 will change up, and so we'll be putting some stuff out, so if people here have questions, they can check our website to do that. And then I just want to let everybody know we had a draft of the development agreement come in today, and that's been distributed to all of you, and Butch will be reviewing it when he returns, and we'll be going from there.
So, and we do have, just a reminder too, we already mentioned it, we do have the specially called work session on July 31st for the code enforcement. And then on August the 6th, isn't it the 6th? We're calling a specially called work session as well, and that's gonna be to walk through the development agreement with council, and I think we need to have the DDA
They
invited.
could be invited. so-
Yeah.
Will that be in the evening, or do you know that?
Yes. yeah.
Okay.
In the past, we've just had Blake call in, that could be done as well. If you'd like to have him part, we'll see what Butch wants at that point.
Yeah, it may be just that Butch walks us through everything. We can talk about it and see what kind of questions we have come up. But the deal with that is, we'll be going into our August the 8th, is it the 8th or the 12th?
Well,
The August 12th meeting, that we would like to approve that agreement. So, I don't want everybody approving something, obviously. It's big and it's technical and there's a lot of details. We've been through it before, and there hasn't been a whole lot of changes since the last time we've been through it, but it's been a while since we've been through it. And before we get down to the final vote, I just think it's good if we all sit back down and go through to make sure everybody understands what we're doing. So we'll be doing that in advance of the August the 12th meeting.
Okay, I was
Okay.
just checking to make sure I had it.
And I think I've got it on my calendar as at 6 PM. We didn't really set a time. Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
That's fine.
So Tuesday, August 6th,
It's Tuesday, August 6th.
second day of school.
So you'll be tired.
You'll all be energized.
Okay. We do have an exec session. We have a short meeting. Can we come back after
Absolutely.
and run through that?
Okay.
So that way everybody's not.
It will be very short too, it's not.
Will there be any action coming out?
No.
No, it's really just an update on several matters.
That's Snellville Pavilion, that's really the one suggestion I need from you guys.
Yeah, because all I can say is, ain't nobody in a truck ever gonna read any of these signs.
Well, that's
what's
their
up.
option, not to read
That's-
it.
It's their
We
option
need
not
two
to
of them
read.
right size, and then,
We'll say hello.
yeah, and then they'll get a second look at it when they're on their way out.
They'll say, oh,
And
that's,
then maybe they'll go back and read it.
Yeah,
at least it's posted,
it'll be posted.
right?
Just
Yeah.
saying.
We've met our legal responsibility.
Well,
our
it's
choice,
not
this one or
ours.
this one?
It's not our
They're both the
responsibility. It's
same.
their
Yeah.
responsibility.
The red one
We
looks
should all
better
of these to-
Yeah.
if it were reflective, and
And the no-
Chuck
Oh, you
is
need a
right,
motion
it needs
to-
to be a lot, the
No, not
sign
for the
itself
word. Yeah,
needs
that's
to be a
right.
lot bigger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, the dimensions on there are silly.
I'd have it where you'd be, they have to drive and
Through
it'll
it?
bump their windshield over their cab and they have to drive under it.
You can hang those chains like
Yeah.
this, make sure you're not gonna hit the bridge.
That's a good
Exactly.
idea.
Well, no, y'all almost finished the executive session. We're all in agreement.
All right, we won't need
Sorry.
to come back then.
Mayor, do you need to adjourn?
Oh,
Well, we don't usually adjourn the work session. We're just always doing it after exec session. So is there a motion to adjourn
Motion
the
to
work
adjourn the
session?
work session.
Emmanuel
second,
and Warner,
and everybody raising.
all in favor.
I know, everyone wants to stay in.
Schultz left.
Is in the bathroom.